I'm E.
I'm Rob.
I'm still tipped up.
Welcome to the next movement, folks. Still tipped Dove, aka Dove. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot we want to talk to you about tonight, but I thought we could kick off the conversation with All the Weight Feathers Don't Have, which is a recent project you released. And for me, the title says it all, right? The album's foundation is this bed of melodic, light sounds, and there's this ease that you immediately feel when the project starts that's carried throughout its entirety. Even on the tracks where rappers are delivering verses with a lot of energy, the production doesn't feel really heavy. And then you have these instrumental tracks in between the ones that feature the artists you're working with on this project. And they have titles such as A Recess, Break, A Hiatus. So I quickly sensed the theme here. And so I'm wondering about the intentionality behind the album structure. Did you organize it in such a way to serve as a reminder to yourself and maybe others to just slow down and take a breath, even when there's work to be done, and to be present in the moment when there's so much going on around you?
No, I wish I was that poetic and had been that intentional about the choice of that structure. But I'll just be honest and say no. But that's a beautiful sentiment, and I appreciate it. If it did that, that's awesome. But it was more so like, you know what? It was honestly born out of not wanting to get like 8 more features. Like that album was a follow-up to an instrumental project that I did. There's a little story behind it.
Okay.
All the sample source materials from this one guy named Buddy Ross, who made soul and jazz rock music in the 60s and 70s in Philly. And he gave the actual tapes to Darko the Super. The actual tape.
Wow.
And so that Darko could digitize it. So Darko had the stems from the actual sessions, which is unheard of. You don't actually ever get to sample from stems, like the isolated guitar, the isolated piano, the isolated vocals. Unheard of. Gigabytes worth of material. So I made this beat tape with Bud Ross and put that out in like 2018. There were no artists on that, and I'd always planned on following it up and putting artists on those beats and maybe making new ones out of the source material. But it just took a long time. I was working on a lot of other stuff in between it, and I actually lost some files. Like I lost some sessions, like my own stems and stuff like that. And basically that album was going to come out on Backwoods. Like that was the album that maybe was going to be my debut on Backwoods, was this particular album. But it started to get a little longer and have a bunch of different features. And then I had this other thing. So we switched it up. And that's why actually the Billy Woods track on my When You're Outside album with Backwoods was actually pulled from All the Weight Feathers Don't Have. That's a Buddy Ross sampled beat as well.
I see.
So that was a long way of saying I had several more beats I had made out of this source material, this sample material, but without wanting to track down more features and mix songs with features, I kind of just split it up and put an instrumental in between each feature track that I already had. And then it made a full-length EP out of that instead of just one, an EP, or a full-length LP out of that instead of an EP length with just features, just like.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for that behind-the-scenes look.
As a producer, I've heard you acknowledge in other interviews you don't have a specific sound that you're necessarily aiming for. And I think that comes through. If I listen to your catalog, the production varies from one song or project to the next. But it has made me wonder, like, is there like a guiding principle when it comes to making a beat? Or is it just about like what strikes you, what inspires you in the moment?
It's funny, like there's this one plugin that I use that's just very simple and it doesn't do much. It just like adds distortion to stuff. And I've talked to people about this because I don't really have like a sound like necessarily, but I do have what other people have described, and I felt like I've found myself describing it as well as like a texture. So I have a certain texture that's like on a lot of my beats, but they're not all like crazy industrial loud. There are some that are softer and weirder and more electronic too, but they all do have this one distortion setting on maybe almost all the tracks that I make. I'll turn up this little distortion thing, so I feel like there's a through line there. But yeah, I don't have a specific through line in most of my stuff. It's really just like whatever I listen to that day. I sit down and try to like make something that that I thought was awesome that someone else made. I try to like remake that. It never comes out the same, but it's always like a jumping off point.
Oh, so you're talking about like other beats that you've heard, or just
just like no, just music, just like
yeah,
music.
anything, yeah. Yeah, naturally, then that's what leads to this sort of varied sound. You're pulling from a bunch of different.
Yeah, I listen to so much random stuff that I'm just like, oh, that I'm gonna try to make something that sounds like that later.
Right.
When I think about collaboration projects like All the Weight Feathers Don't Have, and producers, you know, sort of getting this roster together of MCs, I think of them as directors. I mean, even when the project is really collaborative, and maybe that's because I think of a beat and production in general as the foundation. So for me, that's what guides the direction of a song. With all that said, I'm wondering if you ever find yourself occupying this role when you're working with artists, or is there this urge to guide folks in a particular direction to ensure a project turns out to be what you envisioned it to be?
I weirdly don't necessarily know if I have that as much as a lot of other producers, and I kind of only know this because of the feedback that I get from the artists that I work with. Is I don't ask for different takes or different direction, and honestly, that's not even necessarily a positive thing. It's maybe something I could learn to do, and maybe it could lead. But so I just kind of let that particular project kind of formed itself anyway because it was all pulled from the same sample source material. So the direction that I was given to the artist was like laid out for me. It kind of wrote itself. I was like, hey, I'm making this beat tape that's from all this guy's samples. There's already a precursor to it. What I'm going to do is put a bunch of people on it. So just give me something like Fly. Like it doesn't have to be concept song. It doesn't have to fit into the concept of the record. It's just the fact that the record just is going to exist as like a cool rap record. So it made it kind of easy, you know, especially because honestly, when I reach out to artists or when I talk to artists that come through to record features, if someone is hitting them up for a feature, they like to be given direction. They don't want to have to put the effort in to come up with a concept or this and that. It's like, if you wanted me to do a feature, tell me what to do. Be a director. Give me my marks. Where should I hit? You know, like things like that. But I do tend to take a more of a backseat in that stuff until it becomes like very obvious that me and one artist are making a full project together. You know, then maybe I'll take a little more direct stance in things. But All the Weight kind of wrote itself before I even started getting the features because it was an easy concept to pitch.
Speaking of projects that you produce in full for a single artist, you and Alaska just put out The Structural Dynamics of Flow. Great project. Really enjoyed that recently. I heard you guys talking about it on Call Out Culture. You mentioned in that interview regarding beat packs that it sounds like they're usually just sort of random selections that you're just pulling from a bunch of different places.
Yeah, I have to. I can't. And I've I've been doing it a while now, and I felt like this is what has led to success. So I'm just sticking to it. I make so many beats. The way I make beats is I'll even go for a week or two without making a beat, and then I'll sit down one night and make like 15 beats. And if I wake up the next day and 5 are dope, or 7 are dope, or 3 are dope, well, that's fantastic. That's 5 great beats that I'm gonna save, and the rest are garbage. I'll throw them away or maybe revisit them later or whatever. But I make a lot at once, so I end up with these packs, and I have to avoid trying to think, when I'm listening to which ones to send to someone, I just listen to ones that I think are dope on that moment. Like, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm putting it in this folder. I force myself to not go, I think A would sound good over this.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is after the first pack goes out, 2 or 3 are selected from that pack. Well, then I'm going to start to have that bias. I'm going to be like, oh, they picked these 2 or 3. When I'm combing through to send the next pack, if I'm combing through 50 beats to send 10 more, I am probably going to make a slightly conscious, slightly subconscious connection to a certain sound. And then that's going to be a back and forth between me and the artist. But on the first pack, when I'm just starting to work and meeting someone new or a new project or something, I'm sending random. I'm sending 5 different styles.
Yeah. That was going to be my question, like whether you think about, using this project with Alaska as an example. When you're thinking about, or when you thought about sending beats to Alaska, it doesn't sound like you were thinking like Alaska would sound dope on this. It's just like
not at first.
So how come? Like, what makes you want to stop yourself from doing that?
Because I felt in the past like I've tried it both ways, and I feel like I've always had success, and also so many times I'm in the studio, like I'm lucky enough to have a spot to record like in Brooklyn and stuff. And so many times I'll play beats for someone and they'll be like, why didn't you send me that? And I'm like, I would have never thought to send you that. And they're like, well, that's my favorite shit. So that just happens so many times, and it just works. I have enough beats to just send, like, especially on that initial pack, just send the most random shit and like let it go from there. I've just avoided doing that because I feel like I've been wrong too many times, and been told that I've been wrong too many times. Like, oh, I picked these 5 for you, and they're like, all right. And then I'll play them 5 random ones, and they'll be like, these are the best ones I ever heard. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? All right, I got to get out of this habit of trying to think I know what you. Sometimes it's super obvious, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll make something and it'll be like, oh, I would bet $1 million this person would like this, and I'll be right. But it's not, you know, it's just not. And again, because the way I make them in packs, that first pack, I'll just send a 10 pack and just pick at random.
It sounded like the project with Alaska came together pretty easily, pretty smoothly.
It did, yeah. Especially like the first pack went out, he picked a few, came through. We picked more to match that, and then him being able to have that time and space to record pretty quickly as well, which was rare for him, and you know. It just happened. Yeah.
I was wondering, like in general, when things go smoothly and they go quickly, they're easy. What is it that the artist brings that allows for that to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess just in a weird kind of a neutral answer is just speed, which could come one of many ways. Maybe they had written at home, or they can write fast in the studio, or, you know, if it's just kind of like a lot of projects now, especially these past couple of years, for the people who don't live really close and kind of come through and develop and record over the period of time. There have been a few projects where I would just record over a week or a weekend, or just like quickly over maybe 3 consecutive weekends, like with the Alaska thing, maybe a little more spaced out. But if they're just prepared and have the shit written or can write fast, I can mix fast and we can just make it happen fast.
Yeah, it sounds like that's it, right? Preparation is what makes it possible.
Yeah.
I'd say beyond the quality of your work, it seems like artists like genuinely enjoy working with you. Like folks have said as much to us. I've seen folks mention it on Twitter. And I'm wondering what you think you bring to the process of producing or engineering a project that makes artists so comfortable.
Well, it's in my home, you know what I mean? So like I'm in this apartment and I have an extra room in here that's like a studio space. So it had to be like, I had to only work with people that I'm comfortable with, like, and that they're comfortable with me. Like, make yourself at home, the kitchen, the bathroom, you're in someone's space, like you're hanging out with a friend. So that vibe, and just the I've been here for over 15 years now, that vibe and the amount of people that have come through, I feel like they've left an energy here that's just palpable. And so people just feel comfortable. And also it's you know, I struggle with calling my place a music studio, because even for myself, music studio invokes an image in your head, and mostly that's the console. That's the big, at least of 16 tracks, you know, that's the image it invokes. A console, probably a booth with a glass piece, or a booth with a glass window. I don't really have any of that. We have like a booth over here, and I have some equipment and stuff like that, but I just have like a comfortable space, some good equipment, and some know-how. And it's like being in someone's like living room, because it kind of is, with some good equipment. So I feel like that adds to that comfort and creates a lot of, you know, chill vibes for the artist. And that leads to the smooth projects as well, because a lot of people are working with a producer that doesn't have a studio. So you have to find a studio, then you have to find a mixing engineer, then you have to find a mastering engineer. I kind of just do it all in my spot. all at once.
Right.
You know?
John Paul, Ringo, George, fucking Harrison. John Paul, Ringo, George, fucking Harrison. Let's go. John Paul, Ringo, George, fucking Harrison. Let's go. In the back, here we go now. John Paul, Ringo, George, fucking Harrison. Niggas on weed, white boys on heroin. Keith Richards, how the fuck are we still alive? And even if it's a rhythm, but alive. John Paul, Ringo, George, fucking Harrison. Niggas on weed, white boys on heroin. Keith Richards, how the fuck are we still alive? And even if it's a rhythm, but alive. Forget me, son, we are in the in-between. I got deals on the table and McCain dreams. Who I gotta break to, who I gotta bang, who I gotta break to, who I gotta bang. Forget me, son, we are in the in-between. I got deals on the table for the dreams. Who I gotta break to, who I gotta bang, who I gotta break to, who I gotta bang. Bitches half I can't get it, bitch. No stripping, big red all in my place. Till you shut downstairs by the freezer. Shoot your shit with baking soda. mic's for you, need to come on.
I wanted to ask about House of Disorder, which is another project you recently dropped. It's a collection of songs that you have with Nosaj from New Kingdom. Shout out to Nosaj. We had him on the show and he's great. You two seem to work really well together. It feels like one of those relationships where you can anticipate the other person's needs before they even ask you for anything. So I'm curious if this is because you and Nosaj both love a wide range of music genres. We spoke to him when he was on the show, and I've heard you talk about the variety of music that you enjoy. And I wondered if you think that helps to put you and Nosaj on the same page when you're creating a project together.
I think absolutely, especially because like it happened immediately because he came and like it happened because of the music, right? Like he came and recorded his piece and I was like, oh, that was crazy. Didn't really have to say much, whatever, like zipped it up. It was to be shipped out to Arm & Hammer. It was a feature, like, and when it, kind of reached a level where when someone comes and records, you want to make sure it's real organized, get the files, back them up, send them out, like whatever. So we wrapped that all up. I'm just like, that was crazy. Like he just did that, like whatever. He was like, you should play me a beat. And it just happened so fast. The first beat was like loud and chaotic. He was like, can I do something? I was like, all right. He got even louder and more chaotic on my beat. And I was just like, whoa, this is it happened without us having to talk, just him hearing my beat, me hearing what he did, and then being like, oh, we could do this. We could do this a million times over. Like this is and then we just did, like it was just like I would just go through stuff and he would just select the the most bizarre and cool stuff, and there's absolutely no one that sounds like him.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
There's just not. And yeah, I'm so excited that record's finally out, and I know he's working on more stuff. And yeah, that dude is a legend.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. You seem to have this knack for working with artists who bring a certain uniqueness and energy to the table. I mean, obviously Nosaj, but I'm also thinking about Aloe Vera, Chaz Canary, Big Baby Gandhi, and other people. Maybe this isn't necessarily true, but I imagine that producing for an artist that has an eccentric sound and direction could be challenging because you want to make sure that you're doing production that honors and fits with their artistry. And I feel like that requires an extra set of skills. I'm wondering if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think I do, but I also feel like we're meeting each other where we're at, and we know that neither one of us is going to change one another. Like, they're not, I got my beats and I have so many of them, and you can ask me to make different types of sounds and I'll try, but it's not necessarily it might go the totally different direction. And then they bring their weirdness to the table, and like, if it melds, it melds, and it usually does. Like, we wouldn't have been magnetized towards each other in the first place, I think. But like, I feel like the extra set of skills is me being extra chill about it. Like, I don't care. Like, I do still hear from these artists that I work with, and they're not saying this in a negative way. They're saying this in a positive way. That other producers will like really produce. Will be like, nah, not that one, or let's do another take, or let's change the beat. Let's do. And I don't do shit like that. Because like, I don't know why. It's just I've never been in a position where I like really felt the need to, where I was like, we need another take. And that could be a good or a bad thing. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I feel like it's pretty neutral. Obviously, I have been putting stuff out that people like, so it's fine. And then these other artists and producers who they also put out stuff that people love. So both methods work. But the weirdness, I feel like, especially weird artists, for lack of a better term, you know what I mean, who are attracted to working with me, I think maybe no, because like I'll back off and let them do what they want to do, and then when they're done doing what they want to do, I'll finish it up and they'll probably end up liking it. So it's about giving them space to just be. Yeah, and being like, yo, do you, like, I'm not gonna, unless there's like something wild, I don't really produce like that. You know, I'm there to just to make as many songs as we can. If any of these beats make you want to write, then write, and then we'll mix it, like. Yeah.
I've heard Willie Green say something similar recently, like the importance of giving artists space. So
yeah, well, Green is the man.
Yeah, you guys are clearly onto something. I get the impression though that, like, especially when you're doing a full album with someone, that's like a highly collaborative process. I wonder though about when it gets to like the engineering phase, like how collaborative is that? Are you mostly doing that on your own and then sending stuff to folks, or how involved is the artist?
Engineering, like mixing, you mean?
Mixing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll do several sessions on my own, send the files and be like, listen to this on as many different speakers as you can. Hit me with notes. They'll hit me with notes. I'll go back in again. But also during that time, they'll come back over. We'll sit again to do stuff that's like easier to do in person. Maybe if we're putting like dialogue samples in or doing drops or something, they'll just come by and sit here and we'll just do that in person. Then I'll do some more by myself and send them out. And it's just like a mixture of that, of me doing a round of mixing, sending it out so they can test it on where they test their music at, and then maybe them coming by one or two to do an in-person mixing session. But typically those are more for like structure or additives or superlatives and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying, like, I studied a little bit of mixing and engineering in college. I haven't never done it. I haven't done it since. So I know basically nothing. But I really try not to shit on songs or albums that I don't like. But if I'm honest, I have a hard time not doing that with stuff that isn't mixed well or that I feel like isn't mixed well. And for me in general, that typically involves like an imbalance between low end and high end. I have a really hard time listening to stuff when the highs are like thin and sharp.
Sure.
The example that comes to my mind is Tribes once again from the Love Movement. Like the snare on that is just so sharp that like it's hard to listen to at high volumes for me.
Yeah, sure. Sibilance.
Yeah. On the Black Thought album, he just did it with Danger Mouse. There's a track on there where like the vocals they're underneath this effect. They're kind of buried in the mix. It's a little hard to hear it. I can't listen to it.
Sure.
There are times, when people are really pushing the low end and it gets really muddy and it kind of overpowers everything else.
Everyone's talking about the new JPEG and Danny album.
Yes, that might be an example.
Somebody left a compressor vocal, I think, on that one.
This is why I'm asking you this question. Like, I know that, folks more and more are like trying to mix their own stuff, even though the examples I just gave are people who are probably paying professionals to do it. But I wonder, like, is there advice or guidance you would offer folks who are trying to develop the skills to mix their own music?
I've come into this kind of recently. I even was on a meeting today where I had to bring this up. I feel like this is not unique to me. I have imposter syndrome. I never even went to school for this. I just taught myself. Like I bought a MacBook and then just kept at it. Mm-hmm. And then eventually YouTube came into play and I just consumed as much YouTube tutorials as I could. So what I lean on heavily is the artists. Is the artist that I'm working with. I'm like, did you listen? Did you listen loud? Did you listen quiet? Like, you need to tell me. I need to know. Like, I need you to be brutal. Like, tell me if you're like, this doesn't sound, because like, I need that feedback before it's going to come out. And yeah. And like, mixing changes so often, like month to month, I'll be mad at myself because I'm like, well, this is out and I could have mixed it better and it was only a year old. Like, but it doesn't matter. Like, and then I struggle with the fact that it doesn't matter. I work on a lot of stuff that's like a different genre doesn't have my name attached. I'm just like mixing and mastering stuff for people. And like really loud, like trap sort of hip hop with like tons of 808 and bass. I'll mix stuff and they'll be like, yeah, turn it up. And I'll be like, I can't. It's so loud, it's like distorting. And they're like, yeah, sounds good, turn it up. And who am I? Like that is what. And I listen to music, like modern music, where I listen on my good speakers and it's distorting, but I fucking love it. And it is what it is. Like sometimes these technical things where I'm like, the voice is too low and the artist is like, I don't care. And I'm like, well, then why do I care? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's I struggle. Mixing is the bane of my existence. Let's just say. So if my records are coming out mixed well and people are listening to them, that like makes me happy because it's very hard.
Yeah.
Especially when there's clear examples to point out and be like, you see here how bad this is, right? Like.
Yeah, I remember spending hours in college, like in the studio, trying to get things to sound just right, and at times being like, is anyone ever going to care about this? Like, does this matter to anyone but these 5 people in this room?
It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. I mean, stuff that's really popular, you can point out probably terrible mixing things, but music isn't, again, the person, if they feel the song, they feel the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
if it moves them, it moves them. Like if when they turn it up too loud, it pierces their ear, but they love the song, well then they're gonna play it a little lower because they love the song and they don't want to hurt their ear, like
right.
like they'll make exceptions if they love the music.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it is an interesting game. Like mixing Nosaj is really hard because he's so loud and aggressive, and some of the beats that maybe I would like to change, like how loud some of the beats are. It's like we can't. That changes the whole feel of the song. Just leave it. We want people to feel it. Like,
somebody should like do a study. Maybe people already have when like polling people and like getting them to listen to one song to see if they notice little particulars.
Yeah,
it's interesting that some people notice, some people don't care, or they don't hear it.
Yeah, and there's too many people are too dynamic. Everyone is too different. There's too many speakers, there's too many headphones, there's too many different people's ear canals. Like everything is just so different that you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
And I think I probably only care because I have some little knowledge about the process, and
you're kind of trained.
That like colors, the way I might listen.
Nah, but that's like also widely known, especially that one Tribe record, right? Like that it's mixed poorly. And like, I mean, everyone was talking about consumers are. I mean, when it's drastic, like it was shocking how many people were talking about the mix on the Danny Brown JPEG Mafia record, because you don't always hear about stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But it was like kind of, I guess, really obvious to people that his voice was a little low, right? So everyone was talking about it. It was. There's a threshold for everything where if it seems like if there's like an overwhelming amount of people being like, I actually don't like this, even though maybe that was your intention, I can't enjoy it. I don't think that happened with this record, but maybe it got close to that,
Yeah.
So you mentioned Call Me When You're Outside earlier, and I'm glad you did, because this is another project of yours that I really dig. I love it because I love the sense of community that the album fosters, which seems to be the whole point. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but it feels like you were trying to capture the magic that has happened over the years in this music space. I don't want to call it a studio that you have in your home in Brooklyn.
Absolutely.
You worked with so many artists, and I imagine that's created space for deep conversations, friendships, and of course, great music. How important has it been to have this space? Do you think your production and other work would be impacted if the studio didn't exist? I
would not have the placements that I have or the connect. Like, I think my beats are great, but I am ridiculously lucky to have had a recording space in the middle of Brooklyn in like a central area, and to have had it for a long time. Like it is probably the best thing I have going for me. Not even trying to shit on myself. Like, it is absurd to be able to have in a Brooklyn apartment, like a space, and then just like also at this age, no kids, no mortgage, like just to be able to kind of like keep it going like that, So yeah, huge to have the space.
Have you been impacted by how much Brooklyn has changed over the years?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I mean, on a personal level, yeah, but on the music stuff, like, it's just always been a hub. Like, Brooklyn is just like one of the top hubs. Like, people from out of town come here, stay here.
Yeah.
Have been for years now, just because like how long I've been around. And it's just like, I was here before the Barclays Center even went up. Like, I'm a gentrifier, but I'm now 17 years into gentrifying the place. Like, it's crazy. Like, how drastically different it is.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we've definitely heard stories when we have folks on the show. There's a lot of artists on this project, but I'm wondering if there's artists that you wish you would have had join you on this, just considering the amount of people you worked with over the years.
Oh, well, you mean somebody who like I've still never worked with? I mean, like,
not necessarily, no, like people that you've worked with that maybe couldn't join you on this. Is there anybody that was sort of left out of the conversation, people that you wish that could have been on this, but for whatever reason weren't?
No, definitely not. Because like essentially at the end of the day, when it really started to come together, Woods picked the tracks. So he executive produced that.
Yeah.
And so he carved out, because I had pitched that what turned into All the Weight Feathers Don't Have. I pitched that record to him, and he was into it. He wanted to do a record with me, and I was going to work on it a little bit more. He had a track on it at first. Track that's on, actually two of the tracks that are on Call Me When You're Outside have Buddy Ross beats, meaning I sampled from that source material. So when that like didn't pan out, he's like, let's do something smaller, tighter, and like he had always wanted a home for that track Kingston, and so we wanted to do something smaller, tighter. He's like, do a bigger record after that. And then he picked out the tracks, and he picked out the Shirt track, which already existed as a single that Shirt had put out. He formulated the Koreatown Oddity track via the Adult Swim single series. So he was like, I'm gonna do this, like we can put that on there. He's like, you can produce that. So yeah, he kind of like executive produced that and put that together. So to answer your question, no, I didn't miss anybody for sure. Like it was.
I'm glad you explained that because I was wondering when I read that what an executive producer does exactly and what
Means
his
a lot
role
of
was.
things, but it often means, especially like I know Griselda. I'm not a huge listener of Griselda, but I know that the main dude is executive producing. Yeah, is executive producing all their albums, and what that means is like they're the one that's gonna pick this beat, this track. You have 10 tracks. Here's 4 of them. Put them on the album, like, and they'll arrange it and maybe even pick a producer to work with an artist, like things like that. Just sort of like make decisions, and there can be lighter versions of that. There can be maybe an executive producer who really just helps with arrangement or like stuff like that.
When I read the description of Call Me When You're Outside on Bandcamp, which is really good, by the way. I don't know who wrote that, but okay. Makes sense.
Of course.
Makes sense. Yep, of course. It affirmed my impression of you as a producer. It feels like to me you're the secret weapon with a shit ton of arsenal that just quietly strikes without warning. I'm wondering if you prefer it to be this way.
Yeah, I do. I want to just like, because I kind of, when I was a long time ago, like I would release a ton of stuff and always put it out there, and like and I kind of like now over the course of a long period of time, I'm like willing to sit and wait on stuff and let it marinate, let it finish, and then like just kind of like pop up and put it out when it's done and like things like that. And so yeah, I do enjoy that. I do enjoy being behind the scenes and sort of like letting stuff formulate behind the scenes and then come out, like kind of, I like secret jobs, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah, it's interesting, like because I've been dropping a lot of stuff recently and like kind of going back and forth with some of my friends of like, well, is it too much? Will one thing step on another? And I don't think so, but only because of the threshold, right? Like there is a certain threshold where if you get popular enough, then you can actually step on yourself. But I don't think me and a lot of my friends, some are, but some are not quite there yet, where if we do one thing and then another thing 2 months later, it's not going to hurt one or the other.
Sure.
But probably it's probably more apt to help at this level, you know, and that could change if you cross over a certain threshold, I think. But so, yeah.
I found this article the other day. It was from Complex. I think it was back in 2012. It was an interview that you did with them. And I'm glad I found it because I did not realize before reading it how long you've been producing. I mean, you've really been out here for a while. And
Complex, it was about me. Was it about that big mixtape that I did?
No, it was like I think it was Complex. It was somebody, a writer from, I guess, from their outfit came to your house and they were in your space.
The guy from Pigeons and Planes.
Jason. Yeah.
That dude got super popular. Do you know that blog, Pigeons and Planes?
Yeah.
That shit eventually it got so popular on its own that it became a feeder site for Complex. So like Complex was just like, give us all the things that you do and like kind of usurp them. So straight up, they call it like a feeder site. And then that blog became huge. But yeah, that was so long ago. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Over a decade ago. Looking back at that time and then fast forwarding to present, does it feel like you're where you imagine yourself to be as a producer?
No, I never. Yeah. Oh, man, that's really hard to answer. I don't know. Like I'm working with some people and I'm working in parallel and tangentially with some people that I'm like, wow. And then the people that I am working with are hitting levels that I'm like, wow. So it's almost like I want to say no, you know, like it feels like really crazy to have come that far. But it's also interesting because part of the reason why I got any popularity that kind of like sustained was because back then I ended up working with some popular artists back then. So it was like, you know, that was interesting too. Like that was like the Das Racist. I don't know if you guys remember Das Racist.
Yes.
Yes. Those guys were huge in that time period. And I kind of helped me as a catalyst. And I didn't see myself with, you know, some of the stuff that's going on now, some of the behind the scenes stuff and stuff that's already come out, like engineering an Alchemist record. That was crazy. Like we recorded Haram here, and so I recorded that and like stuff like that.
So in the same interview, you said that Danny Brown was the artist you wanted to work with the most.
Oh man, he came by. He was here. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. He's on. So it came out, right? Maps track list. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The track list came out, right? So
yeah.
So he came here. He came here to record that. That was a funny night, man. He came real late. And Woods was here. So I didn't work directly on any music. I didn't produce anything or whatever. But he came, engineered his vocals, and recorded that here. So that was
that's
fun.
dope.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But one day I'll have to tell Woods, like I'm sure I've said it before. I'm like, yo, you got to tell Danny I got beats for him.
Yeah. Do you ever fantasize about working with a particular artist and then actually produce music for them as if you were really working together?
I'm trying to think of what you mean, like not just sending beats or
No. So like, let's just say we're talking about Danny Brown still, right? And you're like, man, I really want to work with Danny Brown. So you're like thinking about that, and you put together a beat as if you really were working with him, kind of inspired by the dream of working with a particular artist, and then you make a beat that you have them in mind for. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, only because I can't like make beats that way, because like I just make a beats a certain type of way, like
Sure.
But when they're done, sometimes I'm like, oh, this would be great. For like I was saying before, I try to avoid doing. I always do. I naturally like, oh, this would be phenomenal for A, B, and C. Vince Staples is the number one though.
Oh wow.
Okay, that would be dope.
That dude is.
Yeah.
You guys are fans, but I think he's one of the greatest.
I am. Yeah.
I could hear
one day
the stuff that you've got on this Alaska record. I feel like Vince.
That's
Staples
what I'm saying. I have that weird. I have beats for Vince Staples. I'm confident about that.
All right. Well,
I'm confident about that.
I hope Vince Staples hears this one day.
Me too.
Competition stiff. Listen.
Yeah. Let's go.
He knows some people.
Yeah. Let's go. Okay. Are we ready to talk King of Hearts?
Something to fight for. It seems to be eaten from the core by the worms. You define something to kill for. The fate is transparent, there's never been clear in its form. Red alert, warm as blood. A systematic way of thinking that curls you up. You sit in silence with the sick and this turns you on. Repeat the pattern and the vanity's way too much.
Okay.
That's crazy. So this was brand new to both of you? No, you said you listened, Rob, back in the day.
A while ago, yeah.
I have never heard it. And I sent Rob a message pretty quickly and was just like, this album is fucking great. It is so good. Okay. And I gotta be really honest, and I might have said this before. So I've gotten a lot of education on Def Jux, right? So like that's not a label that I was really following when I was younger, when it was in existence. I didn't know a lot about it, and I feel like people have picked projects from that outfit being on our show, and I've just learned so much. And there's a lot of great music to come out of Def Jux, and this is certainly one of those projects.
A lot of big Def Jux fans would disagree with you vehemently.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. I guess we'll get into this, but
it's a polarizing album.
Sure.
It's so good. Well, so tell us why you picked it.
It sounds like nothing else, and it sounds like if it came out 45 years from now, it would still sound new. And it makes no sense. The genres are all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of this is born out of a negative thing. He passed away.
Right.
So some of this is actually, but it doesn't matter that he was making this music, and in the music you hear like him being onto shit that even in Def Jux, no one else was on, going in this direction or doing these weird things.
Yeah.
And I haven't read a ton about the history. I know El-P. I think he's the one that put it together and made sure it got finished and came out.
Yeah.
But just the way he sings and makes these punk songs and these weird R&B songs, and he'll sing his ass off and not give a shit if it's in tune or not. And like and then he raps some verses on some tracks. It's got one of the best beats I've ever heard in my life in the middle of the album. The track, what's it called? The Moment.
The Moment. That's the one.
It's one of the hardest fucking beats you will ever hear in your life, ever. And it's one of the only beats on the whole album that sounds like that, because a lot of them are like very weird pop punk post. Dude, it's so weird. I love this album deeply.
Yeah. I'm so glad.
And so you weren't super familiar with Camu as a rapper either, like the early stuff.
No.
Were you?
Same, sort of like vaguely.
Only the more popular dudes like Cage and stuff.
SA Smash. I knew a little bit. And when I put it on this week, when I put on King of Hearts this week, it had been so long since I heard it, like I kind of forgot what it sounded like. And I actually like initially was like, I think I was using Apple Music or something. I was like, did they get the files mixed up? Like, is this
Nope.
This is what it sounds like?
Some of the songs are unfinished. Some of them sound unfinished, like just a loop of a beat for a while. Like it blows my mind.
I had the same thought. Like I kind of panicked and I was like, am I listening to the wrong fucking album? but I knew I wasn't. I was like, no, this is it. But I didn't expect it to be like this at all. Like not at all.
Yeah, it's a mind fuck.
Dove, were you listening to this like when it came out? Like did you hear it when it was new?
Yeah.
So what was your reaction like? Like, was this what you were expecting? I imagine it wasn't.
Absolutely not. But within the group of people that I both worked with who worked on music, and then the group of people who was just a fan of all this underground music and stuff like that, half of them hated it because they wanted to just rap.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half were like, this is cool. Me as like a producer and listening to 100 genres of music constantly, like being a music obsessive at that point, I was like, this is insane. And I loved it right away and always have. It's like a desert island album for me.
It's one of those albums where I've seen the cover a lot. Like I heard the story from El-P, but I just never listened to it. And yeah, it's fucking great. I think I could be wrong about this, but I think if this came out now, it would be a really popular album.
Oh, it would do way better now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Way better, especially with the way rap and hip hop is opened up to like weirder shit and stuff like that. But it would still have its detractors because
for sure.
I mean, there's some stuff on there that pushes close to like being silly, like and if you go back and listen to his older stuff, some of the lyrics don't really hold up that well in today's day and age, but he was a very talented rapper. He's a legend. This album was, to his fans, it split them down the middle, but they still rocked with him. They're fans forever. But this particular album, only half of them liked it.
Yeah. As a producer, I imagine knowing the story behind it might impact this, but as a producer yourself, are there tracks on this album that sound more complete from a production standpoint? Do you feel like you can hear that?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, the single plot a little. The single that's got a hook, it's got progression. The Moment sounds pretty full.
Mm-hmm.
Funny Valentine does not sound full. You know what I mean? Like some of them are real short. What's the one? Some of them.
There's one like Bird Flu, I think is the second track where it's clear like there were supposed to be vocals placed in there that aren't there. Going. Yeah.
But it's just like a dance track. It's so
I fucking love that song. Yeah.
I'm listening to it now and there's some dark shit on here. It's fucking crazy.
I'm on Bandcamp and there's like vinyl left and I'm like this is great.
That's great.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like I'm gonna scoop this. Maybe that's because people are torn about it. But is Camu somebody that you could picture yourself working with? I as soon as I heard this, I was like, I know I Dove picked this. Like I was like, I get it. I'm wondering if you ever if he was somebody that was sort of on your radar. I don't know when you started producing, but yeah. I
mean, I started producing when those guys were the dudes. So he would have to still be alive and also still be active and sound wise I'm sure we could, but he might be so famous by now, who knows. He was a legend to me then, so he's but Def Jux was the it label when I first started,
Yeah, okay,
for sure. And this was towards the end of Def Jux. This was one of their last projects.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that she figures it out and she knows where I'm at. I'm obsessed by every movie, that's a fact. She's a dangerous one, no lie.
mentioned like the dark moments on the album. Lyrically, I find it to be much more emotional at times than like the delivery or the mood of the music sort of initially reveals. I'm wondering, like, from an emotional perspective, are there aspects of this album that you might feel more than others?
No, I guess not. I don't know. I guess I don't really tap into this album in like that way where the lyrics aren't necessarily, I don't find too many songs on this album that resonate with me on a personal, relatable level.
Okay.
So I haven't, there's other music that does that.
Sure.
This has always just kind of struck me as like me as an outsider, kind of like, wow, this person is so creative and listen to all this like these crazy lyrics and this stuff and the way these beats sound. Yeah, so yeah, the answer to your question is almost a no, which feels bad to say no, but like explaining it,
But
I
it's the
hope
truth.
helped. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm just in awe of this as like a piece of art by someone who was, on track to just continue making pieces of art, and then unfortunately, passed.
Yeah. I found myself like, rocking with it, and then the second time through this week, got to the track Death.
Yeah.
And then started thinking about the fact that like he's making this music like while he's dying,
sick,
And I was like, oh damn, this is heavy stuff. Which, you might not pick up on if you're just sort of bopping along.
There's this track from around the same era that's not on this album. It was on a Def Jux compilation called Oxycontin by El-P and Camu Tao, because they had a group called Central Services, which is from that movie Brazil. But look it up on YouTube, and it's as good, if not maybe better than everything on this album. They kind of go hand in hand. For me, it's just this single that I think is just this unbelievable performance of a song by Camu Tao called Oxycontin from a Def Jux collection called Collecting the Kid 2 or something like that. It's on YouTube. It's beautiful. You got to hear it.
Can you both confirm? I thought I read that he produced all of these tracks, but with his death, I know that there was still some loose ends to tie up. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, he was the producer, and El-P, I think, finished them, with whatever that means. I'm sure all of them probably were in various states, but some of them were clearly like done. Like the single was done a little and stuff like that. So it's hard, I don't know. I don't know how much information is out there, but I think the general story is that he produced it and El-P wrapped it up upon.
Do you think the production on this influenced you in any way?
100%, yeah. When it came out, I was listening to it obsessively. It just slotted in for whatever other albums around that time were like. To me, it's like whatever year Donuts came out, that was another thing that, like, I mean, this is obvious of any producer you talk to, but like literally just sitting down and being like, the drums go like this, and me going over to my thing and being like, how do I get mine to go, and just like trying, he was being brand new to production at that time.
Yeah. He was 30 when he died.
Who, Dilla or
no, Camu. So fucking young.
Yeah.
Rob, you said before, I think, to me that you think that him passing away had something to do with Def Jux being closed.
I think that's just speculation on my part, but it just, I get the
31,
sense 31, okay.
31, okay.
Yeah. I get the sense that his death really fucked up El-P, and
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've heard him talk about it. Yeah.
And Aesop, who was like one of the flagship artists, was the closest with Camu.
Yeah.
So I fucked that up. Like it's just a culmination. There were other things too, because I think El-P talked about it on
what happened was
the overarching story of why it closed down. But like, definitely a big part of it probably.
Yeah, I don't remember him in that interview talking about the impact of Camus' death, but I just imagine like, if the business is struggling and the industry's trending in a way that doesn't really make sense for the label, that the grief that he might have felt like just was the last layer, so to speak.
Yeah. There's an interview that El-P does with Microphone Check, and he gets a lot into like this period of like Def Jux folding, and I have to go back and listen to that because I think maybe he talks about it then, but I've definitely heard him say it, just how impacted he was by Camu passing away.
Yeah, he hadn't even really blown up yet like some of the other people had blown up. They were getting ready to make that happen, as the label was going up. ASAP had become very, very big. El-P had become very, especially Canox and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cage was obviously very big.
Yeah.
You were talking about influence a minute ago, and I read some stuff on Wikipedia today, so who knows how true it is, but it mentioned Kid Cudi like talking publicly about this album and just describing it as like ahead of its time. And I started thinking about Kid Cudi's music, and
similar vein. For
yeah, it made me think like, oh, I wonder how much King of Hearts may have influenced him. From your perspective, just as a fan of music, like, do you think King of Hearts like was something that may have influenced like people's sounds or their approach after it was released?
I don't know, man. Not any further than maybe a Kid Cudi that I would know of. I don't know. I'm surprised to hear that. That's awesome. That I never heard that Kid Cudi mention King of Hearts. That's fucking crazy.
The entry on Wikipedia made it sound like he actually heard it before it was released somehow.
That's crazy.
And was really into it. I will. I feel like this is maybe some really nerdy shit, but yesterday I'm listening to King of Hearts, and I don't even know if we'll use this in the podcast, but I'm listening to King of Hearts. There are parts of it that made me think of TV on the Radio. I don't know if you're familiar with that band.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm obsessed with TV on the Radio.
Yeah.
One of the greatest bands of all time.
Really incredible band.
All time. Yeah.
And so I started listening to Desperate Youth, and I'm like, this and then I started.
That's a good comparison. That's a good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I started thinking about Animal Collective.
Okay.
And some of the vocals that they were recording around that time. And then I started looking up dates. Okay, so Animal Collective was 2007. Strawberry Jam was the album that came to my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
2007. Desperate Youth was 2008. And then you get King of Hearts 2009, 2010. Kid Cudi 2009, Man on the Moon.
Yep.
So I'm drawing all these lines. I have no idea if any of them are actually connected, but in my mind, I'm like, there's a sonic relationship to some of these records coming out.
I feel like Camus was more likely maybe to be inspired by that music and what he was working on. Because again, no slight, he wasn't famous, right?
Right.
But he was just because he melded all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
His stuff. This particular album melds all those styles and then adds weird rap to it too. You know, like
yeah.
That's the TV on the Radio connection is pretty strong actually, especially that early stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was imagining, that he may have been listening to TV on the Radio or something like Animal Collective, and it got in there.
Yeah, I fuck with that.
Dove, is that one of the reasons you like this, because of all the genres represented?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure that's it's got to be part of it. Yeah, I just remember it coming out, me getting the CD, because I would have put out like anything Def Jux was putting out, I was gonna check out.
Yeah.
And like just falling in love with it immediately. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
And, the story was sad. It wasn't they didn't lean into the story, right? So it wasn't like they didn't use the story as to push.
Yeah.
But it was sad. But either way, the record was just incredible.
So he has one other project. How many other projects does he have out? Because he has a project with Cage, right?
Yeah,
Nighthawks.
The Nighthawk stuff.
Yeah.
That was way more popular than this. I don't know. I'm not even super great with of his. The Wikipedia has a bunch of stuff here. The Blair Crosby stuff, or Blair Crosby stuff. That stuff is, some of it's good. A lot of it doesn't hold up. Nighthawks is good. Relatively. Take it with a grain of salt.
And the megahertz stuff that
with the Weatherman.
Mm-hmm. And the SA Smash.
Wait, was SA Smash?
Yeah,
just kind of like an not totally unspoken, but like an unspoken legend a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
there are diehards. The diehards are like the Blair Cosby series, like that's their shit.
Okay.
And they don't really not allow them to fuck with King of Hearts.
No.
Yeah.
I'm excited to release this episode because I'm very curious like how folks are gonna respond to it.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people prove me wrong. People sound off that they're fans, but I remember, and I still know some people that don't fuck with it.
I'm sort of hoping that people, like younger people of this generation, find it.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. It's dancey. There's like dance tracks on it. It's.
Have you guys heard that Lil Uzi Vert album that he put out? It was him, right? Earlier this year, he put out an album that was like not rap at all. It was like
it was like a prog rock album
recorded with a bunch of indie artists and
Patrick Wembley. Yeah, all the those dudes are connected through MGMT and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. That feels like a similar a similar sort of turn, you know.
Yeah.
So I think kids today, so to speak, would definitely rock with this.
Yeah, it feels like there's more room and acceptance for experimental shit like this.
Yeah.
There is for sure. And this record, I mean, in my opinion, it's modern by any day standard and will continue to be for several years just because of how bizarre it really sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with
Sonically
that.
and lyrically and performance wise, like it's really incredible.
Do you have any final thoughts on King of Hearts?
No. I hope more people listen to it. I kind of hope maybe some people who like listened to it back then and were like haven't listened to it since because they remember how much not liking it. At least one person goes back and is like, "Oh, this sounds crazy now."
Yeah.
But we'll see. There's some weird shit on there. The
I hope so.
33-second song called "Acting an Ass." Like, it gets crazy. There's some brilliant moments. That's undeniable. You can find at least one brilliant moment if you listen to the record.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm so glad you picked this. I'm glad I got to hear it. I don't know that I would have listened to it outside of this, so I appreciate it. Is there anything before we go? This has been a lovely conversation. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Is there anything that you want folks to know about upcoming projects or anything else you're working on?
Yeah, I have another. I'm gonna do one more record on my new label, and then kind of like not do anything on my label for till the end of the year. I'm gonna kind of take a break with that. And that's gonna be a record with Andrew, who you guys know. He was just on the show, right?
Yeah.
And then I have something coming with Sharif on Backwoods, which that cat's been out of the bag for a while. Like Woods has talked about it at certain places, and Sharif has talked about it. So that's going to come this summer.
Nice.
I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be really cool. And then other stuff is like done that I'll just kind of like drop
whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
And then you go quietly into the night.
Exactly.
Looking forward to all of it. Well, thank you so much again for joining us and for this conversation. It was great. This has been The Next Movement, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
They say the game is to be sold and it's not to be told. Nope. They also say that fortune favors the bold. And I know it seems cliche, but homie, read some niche. Drink some Reuniti, maybe buy something off East Bay. Used to find me in the Lower East rocking a niche. Now I go to Surfish and I order their ceviche. Gotta take a moment to praise Hercules the DJ, cause nothing's been more perfect than the purpose of the beat break. Every verse is Percy Miller, think tank, Hearst, feeling mercy killer when it comes to words. Well, I'm usurping Dylan, couldn't be the perfect villain. Erstwhile Bill and Ted, my generation's who you wanna be, but you're just filled with dread. Let's shake the square world, blast off to Kicksville. Let's shake the square world, blast off to Kicksville. Let's shake the square world, blast off to Kicksville. Let's shake the square world, blast off to Kicksville. There's a thin line between insanity and genius, a thin layer of ice between